Hey YouTube, in this video I'll be talking about speed endurance and why it's a myth. And I'm not actually saying speed endurance itself is a myth, more so the definition given to athletes that would be a myth. Because the definition that athletes understand speed endurance for is holding your max velocity for a longer period of time. So say you could hold your max velocity for 2 seconds, speed endurance training should be able to make you hold it for 3 seconds or 4 or 5 and so on and so forth. But that's not true. This is more so important for like 200, 400 meter sprinters, not so much 100-meter sprinters. But it's not true purely because if you actually look at the way these events are run, you'd understand that speed endurance training hasn't brought any real benefits other than lactate threshold training. This is especially evident in the 400 meters because speed endurance training should make it so that you're able to hold your top speed for longer. So you, realistically, you should be able to hold your top speed for at least like 3/4 of the race, or hopefully even longer. Obviously, you'd get marginal returns the more you do speed endurance. So it'd be understandable why that wouldn't be the case, but the 400 is a sprint. It's been classified as a sprint. So it makes sense for speed endurance training to still be able to hold max velocities up until like 350 meters, but that isn't the case. And this is especially evident when you look at Michael Johnson and Wade Van Niekerk when they were running their world record times for the 400. You can actually see their form breaking down and making extremely rookie mistakes. Obviously, lactate is a big part in this, why that occurred, but speed endurance training should at least be able to curb this to a certain degree because you're able to hold your max velocity for longer. And this should just go to show that speed endurance training is just mythological. It doesn't actually exist. 200 is not so evident, but you do see people who run the 200 on the elite level and they essentially standing still compared to, for example, Noah Lyles. You've all seen Noah Lyles 931. Look at how he ran compared to other people. Other people's stride length, well, I mean, the stride lengths weren't bad, but like a stride rate was nothing compared to his. He was just flowing down the track whilst everyone else was just standing still. This is because speed endurance isn't what you should be training. What you should be training is what people end up thinking speed endurance is, because your ability to hold your max velocity can't really be trained. It's like you get marginal benefits. So if you can hold your max velocity for about 2 seconds, like which is quite a lot, then you might be able to up this to maybe 3 seconds. Which means once you've gotten to that 3 seconds, you shouldn't be keep trying to do speed endurance. You should be trying to maintain what you've already had. But this is where we actually want to change the definition of what speed endurance is, because the correct definition, in my opinion, of speed endurance is holding your form, your form at max velocities or close to it for as long as possible. That's a better way to look at speed endurance, because looking at it as holding your max velocity for as long as possible doesn't work. Purely because if you're a 12-second sprinter, would holding your max velocity give you any benefits? Not really. Like if you was able to hold it for an extra second, yeah, you'd be quite faster, but in the long term, speed endurance isn't going to give you any benefits. But what about improving your efficiency, which should allow you to be able to hold your max velocity for longer and finish a race with less fatigue? Now that's a different story. That means you need to work on your drive phase and work on your form so it's more efficient. That way, you're able to get to top speed later and hold it for longer. But now we have another problem if you was a 12-second sprinter, which is as a 12-second sprinter, most likely your top speed isn't very high. So what do we need to do? We need to work on your top speed. The reason why people will look at certain elite sprinters and be like they've got good speed endurance and stuff like that isn't because they've actually got good speed endurance, but it's because they tend to have a higher top speed than the rest of the field, or if they don't have a higher top speed, they're able to hold their form for longer in the race than the rest of the field. And you can watch many 200-meter races and many 400-meter races, especially where there's a big gap, and you'll be able to see the way the rest of the pack is running the race is completely different to how the front runner is running the race. As long as they're winning, of course. By the end of the line, you're gonna see the way they look. It kind of looks magical, but the way everyone else looks kind of looks standard. And this is because their coaches made them understand that speed endurance shouldn't be chased, especially if you're slow. So obviously, they wouldn't be slow, but you don't want to do speed endurance with the intent of trying to hold your top speed for as long as possible, but with the intent of trying to maintain your form for as long as possible. Similar to when you're doing lactate work. It's really similar in this case, but it's more of the difference in the violence, because when you're doing lactate work, it's more just trying to fill the lactate and push through. Whether you hold your form or not isn't the biggest deal. It's more just getting your body more adapted to lactate and having a high threshold to it. But with speed endurance training, the lactate builds, but you won't be able to feed it, and it won't be able to do as much damage because it's not able to be around for long. 400 not so much, but 200 definitely. So being able to understand how to hold your form whilst you're at your top speed is extremely important, purely because a lot of people, especially with the 400, their form breaks down. In fact, I'm pretty sure everyone's form breaks down in the 400. It's just how it goes. But if someone was able to maintain their form for the entire 400, what we'd end up seeing is the splits for the 200-meter splits for the 400 would be extremely similar. In fact, there's a good chance that if someone was actually able to pull this off, because I don't think anyone has, what you end up seeing is someone would end up running the 400 with negative split, which essentially means the second 200 of the 400 meters was faster than their first, which no one has ever done, other than with extremely slow first 200. Because I've at time of this recording, my current PB for the 400 was done with a negative split, but it wasn't anything special. I'm pretty sure I ran the first 200 in like 30 seconds and the final 200 in like 25. Obviously, there's a lot of work that needs to be done because there should be a second differential and all of that. But my PB for the 200 at the time was 24. It's not here anymore. 24:41, I think. So if I was able to run both 200s in 25 seconds with a slight differential, maybe like 26, 25, that would go to like I'd be able to get 51 seconds, just cut off my time like that, purely because running 225s would be extremely hard because it'd be a 0.6 second difference from my 200-meter personal best at the time, because that's not my personal best anymore. But you'd be able to see like the difference if I was able to hold at this speed for longer, because as long as I was able to get through the first 200 relatively stable but get to my top speed as late as possible and hold that for the final 200, obviously I'd slow down most likely because that's just how physics works. But through my training on switching from trying to be able to hold my top speed to trying to hold my form when I'm running, my body would be able to just glide off the floor better, and I'd be able to hold my top speed for longer, whether I want it or not. Or the main thing here in reality being hold a speed close to my top speed, because a lot of people, when they do speed endurance training, they're actually trying to be able to hold their max velocity for as long as possible, but there's not much focus on after that, because you're going to slow down anyway, whether you like it or not. So making sure that you're able to slow down as slow as possible is extremely important. And like I said earlier, there's a couple of different ways you can play around with this, but essentially you want to hit top speed as late as possible in the race, and you want your top speed to be as high as possible, so you hitting your top speed later in the race doesn't affect the race. Because if my top speed was like 15 miles per hour and everyone else is 80 miles per hour, I don't care how late I hit my top speed, I am not going to win this race. But if my top speed was 20 miles per hour and everyone else is 18, then that means once I hit 18 miles per hour, the later I can get those extra 2 miles per hour, the happier I'm going to be especially when I finish the 400 meters, because that's less time to slow down. And through my drive, because my drive phase was so efficient, that's more time to that's later on where I get to be at my top speed, less time to slow down. And if I work to my decelerate muscles so they're more efficient, that would mean I'll be able to slow down at a slower rate than everyone else in the field. And as long as I've worked on being able to hold my form for longer periods of time whilst at max velocity, then I'm going to be extremely happy, because most likely this race is going to be a walk in the park. If you like my video, like the video, let me know in the comments section below. Check the description, because anything I forget to say in the video, I always put in the description. And if you like my content, subscribe. Helps the channel out a lot. I post every 2 days at 1 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. If you don't know when that is, just hit the bell and then you'll be notified instantly.